Hi, everybody. This is Marilyn. Do we have any audio? Yes, thank you, Jim. Can always count on Jim. He's right there to tell me. Um, Hello, everybody. This is Marilyn, and it is time for the noon edition of Welcome to My World. This is the 13th day of October, and it is Thursday today, all day. So we've had some ups and downs. This crude oil inventory this morning was it was pretty exciting. The indices are all they don't seem to be too inclined to do too awfully much. They are moving together, and today it looks like YM might be a little bit laggard with the other three, but they're all moving definitely right together, lockstep. The dollar sold off a little bit this morning. So if you trade currencies or you trade any of the Forex pairs, it's probably a real good idea to put a little chart of the DX up so you can monitor what the dollar's doing, because it will affect any of those dollar cross pairs on Nadex that people like to trade. And you can, depending on what pair it is and which one is the leading pair, you can make a pretty good, the thing of it is you don't want your Nadex Forex pairs to be telling you something extremely different than what the dollar index is doing, because it would indicate that there's something wrong somewhere. This is why I like to watch several of these markets, not closely, but just to keep an eye on relative to their friends, what they're doing, because they're all these markets are interrelated, and the Forex pairs are definitely interrelated to the US dollar. So let's see, we've had gold had a couple of nice moves this morning. I have avoided bonds like the plague this morning, because at 1:30, at 1 o'clock, I'm sorry, it's at 1 o'clock, will be the bond auction, and it's the 30-year. It's 101 to be precise, but the bond pit will have closed by then, but there may be more activity that comes in, and tomorrow, overnight and tomorrow, it'll be interesting to see how bonds responds to this auction in light of the FOMAC minutes yesterday, where the general consensus of that is they don't want to raise any interest rates before the election, and then that puts them off until possibly December. So we'll see who knows? They say one thing and dither and blither for a while, and then they say something else. But this morning, this crude oil inventory report, this was a little bit different animal than we've been seeing for a while, because there's been a huge draw in the storage over several months, and the forecast on this was 0.4, and that's just like, the storage is empty. The American Petroleum Institute was their projections were that it would come in today at about 2.7, and it actually came in at almost 5. So it was a really big build. And one of the things that typically happens, and we try to make it very clear that trading news announcements, unless you are a very experienced trader, is usually going to bite you. And if you look right here at 11 o'clock, this crude oil went up and down and up and down and jumped all around. But finally, when it broke the red ice, then that was a nice move down. I wasn't sure it would go too much past the bottom of this range box, but it did. It went right on to the next deviation level. So that was a nice move. And then when it moves that much, and if you look at the, this is what I really like this 10-minute chart for. You get a big red bar down. There's going to be a retrace on that at some point because it's profit taking. But I did not expect it to not only retrace, but then bolt back up above settlement as strongly as it did. So it looks like the oversupply right now just kind of got over itself there for a minute. Anyway, that was extremely volatile right there. So this is why we keep on and on and on, you know, nag about paying attention to these news reports and these news numbers. When these numbers come out, sometimes, and you'll go through news cycles where it's like, well, that was kind of ho-hum, and as sure as you get that in your head, the next time it'll just blow your socks off. So it's best to err on the side of caution. Tomorrow, oh yeah, one thing I wanted to point out to you, the VIX. The VIX is it's trading over 17 right now. This is a bit of an indication that things are not real well with these indices. There are earnings coming out. Tomorrow is JP Morgan Chase, and in light of this fiasco with Wells Fargo, JP Morgan might get punished a little bit tomorrow. So if you trade the indices regularly, I would pay close attention. I've forgotten when that announcement is coming. I can tell you here in a half a second. Yeah, the release is before the market tomorrow morning. So if you're trading NASDAQ or the NQ or the YM, I would pay close attention to see how JP Morgan fares with that. So tomorrow, speaking of tomorrow morning, we are going to have, let's see, we have quite a few significant numbers coming. 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning, and 7:45 might be worth taking a look at the British pound and the euro. But at 8:30, the 8:30 U.S. news numbers, we're going to have several of them right there at 8:30, and then one of the members of the Brain Trust will be speaking at 8:30. And at 10 o'clock, we will have University of Michigan, the preliminary consumer sentiment, and a couple of others that are kind of medium rated. But if you like to trade in the afternoon and you like to trade those indices and you like to trade earnings and all that stuff, tomorrow afternoon at 1:30, I would be extremely cautious because Mrs. Yellen is going to be speaking. And her speaking on a Friday afternoon like this with a presidential election coming up, heaven only knows what she might say. But one of the things somebody today said, they got up for coffee and missed the oil inventory. There is Daryl has posted a very helpful post on the forum, and it's little freebie gadgets that are really handy to have. That you can go to that. Just Google. I mean, not Google, but you search on the forum search window. Put in gadgets or something, and it'll take you to it. But there is a little alarm system, and I love that thing because you can set different events, you can set daily things, you can set it to be quiet and just pop a little box up in front of your face. It's got several different noises, you know, bells and buzzers and all kinds of stuff. And if you leave your computer on all night, you can set it to wake yourself up too. But anyway, those kinds of little things with, for instance, if you go in on Monday, and let me get mine because I'll show you what this does. It's really, I love this little thing. It's the alarm clock, and you can, if you want to add something, you can have it tell you every day or however many days you want. It's got a whole menu here of bells and cuckoo clocks and whatever else it is you want. But this thing is really handy to have news things pop right up in front of your face. And it's a freebie that's worth putting on your computer so you don't miss anything. Anyway, tomorrow is going to be, one of the things we want to pay attention to tomorrow is see if this VIX is going to hold up here in the 16.5, 17 area, particularly with Mrs. Yellen coming on at 1:30 tomorrow. And so, for instance, that would be a very good use if you trade in the afternoon of putting that alarm on there and just have it pop a message up about 7:20 or 25. If you're in a trade at that time, I would really get the stops tightened up if you're profitable. And I sure wouldn't be trying to take on a new trade right then. Wait and see what happens. So there's been a lot of stuff in this in the chat. So if you came in late, I would scroll back up. There have been some charts posted and some trades and all kinds of things. Lots of help's been given to people. I've got a question here about market replay. What is that? That is on your NinjaTrader control panel, and there's a whole thing on how you, oh, thank you, Aaron. Aaron just posted the link to exactly how you use that thing. But it is definitely worth learning how to use that. I've had to have Lori hold my hand and walk me through that, but I get it now. And you can set it to, you don't need to set it for the whole day. But if you have a particular market and you want to go back and retrade a certain day, you can do that. But just use it for the hours in which you trade. In other words, there's no sense in sitting there looking at that thing from 3 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night when you only trade from, say, 8:30 to noon. Just and keep it simple. You can also speed it up or down. And so what you want to do is speed it up to get it to the point where you would normally start trading, and then slow it down to real time, and then go from there. So very, very valuable. It's good use of your time. People who use that tend to catch on to a lot of this stuff much faster. So it is definitely worth doing. And one of the things, yeah, you can set a start time. Exactly. You can set a start time. You don't have to, and don't load 599 days on it. You don't need that. Just load the day you want to go back, or the week, whatever it is. And yes, and only, Lori makes an excellent point, and only use one chart at a time and one market at a time, or you will have the problem I had, because I didn't know that. So definitely just put one chart. Is it, and is it bad to trade during the oil report? Not if you're an experienced trader with crude oil. The other market that the crude oil inventory report can affect is the Canadian dollar. That is the currency that tracks right along with crude oil. So another thing I will warn you, if you're not real familiar with crude oil inventory, today, for example, from the time the numbers hit right here at 11, if you look at my chart, this is 11 where I am now to 11 over here. And notice how stretched out this range box is. It's very stretched out. Well, I have seen crude oil inventory hit where the frame of the time from it hits is all the way from the right margin of the chart over to the left margin, and takes up half of another complete entire frame of that chart, and did absolutely nothing, just jump up and down, because it's running stops. Stay out of those people's way. Just let them go berserk and, be crazy and do whatever they were going to do. And then wait until you have the thing calmed down, it's taken a direction, you have a good set of apex signals, and then take it. But don't be jumping out there in front of that bus, because you'll get run over, and run over very, very badly. So, it was a great sell trend, but you had to stand by till it got, and sometimes, which can be so frustrating with trading, that is the build will come in real low, the numbers very low, lower than expectation. Well, a normal person would think that would, since it's a supply and demand commodity, that since the supply would be down, that it would cause the price to go up. And that's not necessarily so every time. So, my suggestion is that you watch it a lot and demo it a lot, until you've had many weeks come through. Yeah, that's, that's exactly. It, it has a mind of its own. Who knows why it does some of that stuff? But yeah, it can be that can be a dangerous bus to try and get on at that time. Others will give you a much nicer ride. And earlier we were talking about um, uh, gold, and I'll show you that. Somebody get a kick out. Ed seems to think I know. I don't know anything. I'm I just I just make a reasonable assumption based on what I see. And this gold, somebody was going to write about in here, was looking at selling gold. Well, the E had just printed, the E bar had not completed yet, and there's nothing. I mean, if you have a lot of confidence in that, taking that thing, but in gold, gold can turn around and just tear your face off. So with gold, I want the E to complete. I want something else to help me. I don't want to be just, oh boy, there's an E, because if it turns around and goes the other way, this may be uh, one of those light little E's that just didn't truly complete. So once you've got trend catcher, you got the E, you got the trend catcher, you got the trendar flip, and on the other chart, the VAD and the volume, and then yes, it did make a nice move down, and that was a valid entry. But sometimes with gold, and it will do little things like have these little bursts, this little spurt of volume, and you're thinking, oh, good grief, it's going to run away. No, many times it does that, and then it just sits there and hovers for, I don't know, forever. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of it when it does that kind of stuff. And another question I have is, how do I use this 10-minute chart? I have used this. There is a video that Daryl did a training on how he uses this 10-minute chart, and he uses it to trade with and to trail stops. But Daryl has a far greater tolerance than I of these carrying these big stops, and he has deep pockets. He is extremely experienced, and so these things work for him. But he uses this with a MVP, and the thing on the MVP is the MVP confirm has to match the bar within 2 bars. But when he gets a trail going, then he trails it from one deviation level to the next, and he has rules. One of the things that you really have to have a lot of respect for Daryl for is that he has rules, and those rules are on that website for every strategy. And if you follow the rules rule, then you're way less likely to get in trouble. Way less. I like to use this because many times it's easier to see the range boxes, and the crude oil bus drivers like the tops and the bottoms of the range boxes. And another thing is, it gives you a little different perspective because it's time-based. So if you're sitting there in a